righty, guys. Well, welcome to a Wednesday. It's Wednesday, and Wednesday is Blockchain Chat Night. And our focus this evening is going to be on using blockchain to help the community. Um, let's see here. We got a lot of folks in here. Hey, everybody. Good evening. Good evening. And I'm joined with Talisha and Tawana. And
Hello, everyone.
hello. So I think we'll just get right started since it's already 6 after the start time. We got a nice little group of 8 already in here, and we're already on Facebook. Again, we're looking at blockchain and its use in the community this evening. That's the conversation for this evening, and we have a couple of articles we'll take a look at. I may pull those up so we can read across there. One of the first focuses will be on smart cities. Smart city, and we know that smart cities mean a lot of things to a lot of people. A lot of times these smart cities aren't just blockchain. You know, we're Black blockchain consultants, but we know also too that blockchain uses a series of other technologies to include the Internet of Things and artificial intelligence, as well as whatever else that will end up coming up, you know. But anyway, let's take a look at the article for today. Let me share my screen.
Ms. Tawana, your city is on here.
It is. 2 years in a row, getting better each year.
Oh, wow.
That's awesome.
Let me take a look. Oh, my goodness, I have so many screens to see. Oh, dear. Where is it? That one is called the Decade of Smart Cities? Is that the one? Oh, yeah, Decade of Smart Cities. Yeah. Okay,
What
cool.
worked and what didn't?
Okay. All right, there we go. All right, the Decade of Smart Cities, what worked and what didn't. Okay, to kind of go over here, it starts off by saying cities have learned that residents offer an important real-world reality check of technically centered and data-driven work. How Memphis uses fiber optics and cloud to become a smarter city, from owning its own fiber optic smart recruitment practices and utilizing the cloud. The city of Memphis is undergoing a digital transformation. The idea of smart cities was not on someone's radar in 2005, but New Orleans got a head start on data-driven decision-making thanks to Hurricane Katrina. After Katrina struck, the city's dikes failed and the city began using data to improve and speed up decision-making to support the city's recovery. Amsterdam was again an early adopter in 2009 with Amsterdam Smart Cities Initiative. The team used data to address depression and increase treatment for people who didn't receive help. You know, actually, I want to stop with the Amsterdam piece and go back to the Katrina part, because it looks like we go into, you know, we can start off with our local kind of stuff going on in our nation, and then we go into other areas. If you guys we all remember Katrina, certainly, and as we know, the data that they're talking about to improve their decision making ended up being data that includes, you know, not just high tech kind of stuff, but actually the people on the ground, right? I was thinking, you know, when we talk about the data and data-driven decision making, that does include the people. You know, when we talk about Internet of Things, some of those things include people. If you kind of think about how all of us have cell phones and things like that have GPS tracking and things like that on there. I don't know if any of you guys use some of that crowdsourcing. Essentially what we're doing is crowdsourcing data, like if you use any of those apps that kind of allow you to let people know where their traffic problems and stuff like that, like a Wise or something like that. I think it's called Wise. Do you guys use that at all?
Mm-hmm.
App?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes. Oh, Waze. Yes.
Waze. Okay, yeah, WAZE. Yeah, so that's essentially crowdsourcing data, real-time data from, real people, leveraging our cell phones and stuff like that. And I would imagine that that's part of the data they are talking about that was
Some of this
helpful.
also was because of the destruction of the data. So we had physical paper records, and this became an issue with regard to birth certificates, death certificates, property records. A lot of that was underwater. And we saw that specifically with FEMA, that you had to collect some of that information and didn't have that readily available. And then you had an onslaught of people trying to claim property damage without having property information. And that took a strong toll on their city, and they needed a way in which to do that, because that was their top priority after saving lives, was now how do we rebuild when we don't know where we need to rebuild. And that was a very strong impetus for using data and having a stronger digital format, because they needed that to leverage that data very importantly, and to help people recover and to get payments out. So that became again, that definitely sped up their digital transformation with that disaster.
Exactly, and it is kind of shameful a lot of times that it takes stuff like that to expedite these kind of things when we have these technologies and so many people who are smart and are already thinking about, or somebody knows about the weaknesses that the dams had, and I'm always sure that there's somewhere some silo of information that somebody knew, and it was just one of those kind of things where you just don't get any attention until something really.
And we're seeing this again in Puerto Rico. We're seeing this happen over and over again with regard to destruction, and then having to totally rebuild infrastructures. Data becomes highly valuable, and it actually will expedite or inhibit the ability to bring supplies in, help people recover, hospitalization. All those things now rely heavily on data. And not just physical resources. So now they have to be able to transmit people, and what kind of people, and just those kind of things really become really important. I think that's what the technology needs to support that aspect of it. But I think that's where people are like, oh, it'll just happen. It won't. You have to have an infrastructure there to support that. And at any given point, that system needs to have some flexibility in order to be able to withstand disaster of any kind.
Right. And we got to really realize too, a lot of times that, legislation, policies, and politics play in a lot of this. So it might even be a lot of times kind of a situation where the people who have the real information in those silos may have made that aware to everybody, but it becomes down to dollars and cents, and then this is
exactly
where we end up.
I'd like to believe that cities are always thinking about how to be more efficient and secure, and that when you think about the enhancement with using technology, there's a cost benefit analysis that has to be done, right? And I would imagine that has prevented many cities from implementing. But when you have disasters that come into play, now we have to do it, right? You're forced to make the decision because there are no other options, which ultimately then becomes more costly.
Yes.
If,
you have nothing.
Could have done it before.
You have to do it. Yes.
Right. And I'm sure, as you were saying, I'm sure somebody has said that, but again, until money becomes earmarked quickly, like in a disaster situation, can you get that infusion in there? So yeah.
There's an interesting comment there. If you want to see that, Miss Gloria has something with regard to the article.
Oh, sorry, I'm missing that totally.
Well, I can read it. She says,
Okay.
I think that one of the key takeaways from the article is the sentence, the city began using data to improve the speed up decision making to support the city's recovery. This choice can be applied to any city that is considering rebuilding or rebranding. Encouraging your city to have an open data portal is the first step.
Yeah,
very good point.
Infrastructure, again, that's where we have to, data with no place to go is just data. We need it to be a solution. We need it to be leveraged and placed somewhere that it can be utilized appropriately. And that's going to be the major theme here is data, again, can be used nefariously, or again, not with what the intent was, because just because you intend to use the data, it can be, kind of misaligned and dealt with in different ways. And we've seen that a couple times with this.
Yeah. Well, let me continue on and let's take a look at one of our early adopters, as indicated in this article. It says Amsterdam was again an early adopter in 2009 with the Amsterdam Smart Cities Initiative. The team used data to address depression and increase treatment for people who did not receive help by combining statistics from insurance companies with information about costs of treatment for depression. The team found hotspots in the city where people with depression did not receive appropriate care. So again, here's a good use of insurance information. So statistics, and then and I'm not sure how they actually did this, but that sounds really, really a situation where it wasn't just. Again, and I don't really know in particular, but it doesn't sound like it just would have been insurance company information, but probably information from healthcare providers and such like that. But anyway, this is the other piece too that goes on to speak about these public-private partnerships. It says Steph Stoppenhagen, Director of Smart City Solutions for Business Development at Black and Veatch, I think it is, said that public-private partnerships, or P3s, are an effective way to make smart city projects successful. That's where you make those P3s to build a consortium to do this project that way, she says. Stoppenhagen says that smart campuses are a growing trend in a P3 smart project. Sprint has recently, what have I done here? Sprint has recently, what does it say? Sprint has recently announced a smart campus project with Arizona State University to take advantage of the 5G service. Sprint works with the university and the Greater Phoenix Smart Region Consortium to create Sprint 5G Incubator on the Novus Innovation Corridor of ASU, and to conduct joint research and development. I think this is wonderful too, that they're incorporating universities who oftentimes are research-based, and and a lot of times we're looking for people who are thinking outside the box. And a lot of times I'm thinking that on the campuses, you can find those kind of people who are looking at these kind of things and can have the time for these projects,
College campuses are a great microcosm of a small
Absolutely.
city. They truly run kind of independently. Most of these are, when you're saying like a college city town, in the sense where the entire campus is the city. This is a great way to, have a controlled environment in order to test appropriately. And you have, all the elements there: technology, viability, and a demographic that would help you actually, leverage what you're looking for if that's the case with that particular demographic. But I think that's a nice microcosm to test in.
Absolutely, agreed. Successful smart city work. There are many ways to measure what makes a city smart. IDC takes nominations for its second annual Smart Cities Award program with 12 categories. In the first round of prizes, Albany won the Smart Water category, with New York, Code Labs, and Brownsville and Brooklyn who won for their Digital Equality and Accessibility program. They have an index that scores 500 cities on 24 criteria, covering everything from recycling to blockchain. Vienna won a 10 for waste management, and San Francisco achieved the highest score for blockchain. Kind of no surprise there, right? With so many tech startups there, huh? And then in 2017, the What Works Cities division of Bloomberg Philanthropies started a certification process to evaluate how cities use data to improve the quality of life for residents. So far, 13 cities have received gold or silver certifications, like we said, with our honorable mentions being here too. I guess I won't read everything, but we do see that we have quite a few cities here, kind of in our Midwest and Southern areas here.
Miss Tawana is representing Louisville, Kentucky there. She's
Louisville,
proud
Kentucky
to be on there, gold
has
and
gold
medalist there.
Yeah, so it looks like it's actually spanning from sea to shining sea here. I see you got Los Angeles all the way over, to the middle here with Missouri.
What I liked about this is that, again, the criteria is very interesting with regard to, I think people always think of things as, tech, high tech, and it's something that's truly not. It's just like, how well is your garbage picked up? And how, do you have recyclables that work for you? So some of these are very, what I consider just rudimentary, everyday things, but they're a part of city planning and a part of the quality of life for the residents within these communities. So that's where you see these things where we're not trying to make all the lights go off and, smart cities where it knows who you are. It's really just about the day-to-day activities and how to make that more efficient or much more relevant to the community that which it serves.
Yes.
Yeah, what it says to me is that some people sat around a table and instead of saying this is the way we always do it, so let's do it again this year, they decided to change their minds, right? And so when you think about the waste management, this article, of course, you know how when we read these articles, it takes you from one to another.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it was in Australia, they tackled waste management from the standpoint of how much money it costs to pick it up every week. So they created solar power waste garbage cans that compact the trash. And so now I can get more in the can, which means you don't have to come every Friday and pick it up, right? Maybe you can come every third Friday and pick it up. And so just thinking outside of the box like that, for, like you said, Talisha, everyday living, right? And it doesn't all contain tech. Some of it does, we're a blockchain group, but it doesn't all incorporate blockchain.
That's right.
Sometimes just common sense improvements that can make a large impact.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Going down and you'll see, you're kind of coming to it here. Those categories are really, again, how do we leverage the things that we already have? Like I said, I say this over and over, that we've just come out of the information age, and information for information's sake doesn't do anything. We do need it to be relevant. We do need it to, tell us something, except being just data points. So these are the kind of things where you sit and you say, okay, yeah, we have done it this way for the last umpteen years. Is there a better way to do it? Just asking the question and then having some data behind you to say, let's take a look at this. Like we do, we spend too much money trying to collect every Friday. Maybe if you could just cut it in half. What would that do? And I think once you have information and a good question, then you can go ahead and, leverage the data that you have and make some better decisions, just even on that smaller level, that it will have greater and greater impact when they're combined.
And I'm thinking too, like what you're saying about good questions, those good questions need to be posed to those people in those communities. Because, even though we've talked about all these different cities, I'm sure each city has its own specific fingerprint, in terms of need, you know what I mean? So these projects, while, we can share them as best practices for the different areas, as we have the different types of projects that are focusing on different needs, we can start to, build out potentially and scale out on those same ideas.
And as the city gets smarter, right, and as the government agencies try to make things more efficient, more cost effective, as residents, we have a responsibility as well. And I can remember, probably it was about 7 years ago now, when I got the first letter in the mail from the gas company wanting to put
the smart meter.
the smart meter out. And
Yeah.
of course, I was like, I'm not letting you put no meter in my house. You know, first of all, I'm not letting you in my house, and I'm not getting your meter so you can monitor. And because, you know, the concept is they do the adjusting, right?
Yeah.
So throughout the day, the gas company modifies your heat in the home through this smart monitor. You can bypass it. So if they have it at 62 and I'm cold natured and I want to raise it, you can bypass it.
I know, right? Praise the Lord for that.
But the concept is that they'll make it comfortable based on what's energy efficient, based on the temperature outside and all of that stuff. And it's supposed to save you money. And I was so close to it. Like, I mean, like not, I think I ripped the letter in more pieces than I normally rip the mail, you know, like absolutely not. And now, you know, now that I am becoming more sophisticated in technology and understanding that everything is not a, you know, we want to control, we want to be in your business. Some things are really for my own good. And so I just recently considered, you know, maybe that smart monitor is not a bad idea. You know, when you look at the bill and it's higher and you turn off all the lights like you're supposed to, you know, and you insulate the wind, you know, you get new windows or you put the plastic up, whatever the situation is, and the bill still skyrockets in the winter, and you start to think, you know, maybe there's an answer out here, and I've just been close to it, and I need to open my mind and do something different, right, to get that different result. And so as residents, we have to consider doing things a little differently and maybe accepting some of this technology that's being provided for us instead of resisting it because we're nervous about the data that people will collect from us and all of those other things that make us so paranoid, especially as a community. You know, Black folks tend to be a little more guarded.
Yeah.
and so we may need to open our minds a little bit to some of the technology that's coming.
And, you know, I would truly agree with that too, but I also would caution us to not lose some of that skepticism. Keep in mind that, you know, everything has a positive and a negative, and to really, you know, be aware of those limitations of technology, some of the maybe the unintended consequences of technology, and have that be brought to the table so they too can be dealt with and mitigated.
I think this article does a really good job at the end. I think it's Stoppenhagen says that, like, we have to do a better job at informing people why we're using it. I think that's what happens too, because there's just a blind ignorance to, like, I just want to put this smart monitor, and you're like, why? Right. Don't tell me why. I'm not going to be receptive. So I think this is where there's a bilateral exchange of information. They need to do their due diligence in communicating what the data is going to be used for, how they're going to use it, keeping you updated on, yep, you know what, this is what we're seeing from the results. And then having the constituency also asking, like, okay, I would like this. I need to have transparency. I need to see how you use it. And, you know, once a month, I need to know why and how and all this other thing. So I think there needs to be a dialogue rather than just a decision being made and then proliferated down. It has to have everyone involved to see if it's really solving the problem that the people are really having. Not you, again, you assume that it's a problem. Is it really a problem? And really, how do the constituents want that problem solved?
Right. And it does say here, involvement of all stakeholders is one of the items, you know, that we're going to focus on. But just take a look at some other, we already kind of talked about the Waze platform, how they're using that information to collect collision reports and data from the environment in real time. And again, you know, that's one of those where you're one of the Internet of Things, you know, the actual people using their phones and reporting this stuff. You're one of those things in that crowdsourcing of data. I like this other application that DC has, this Right Here, Right Now project, where they are guiding the 911 callers to the right kind of assistance, where they have operators who are now handing over callers with non-life-threatening conditions to a nurse trained by an EMS who determines the most suitable services. I think, again, really great use of that kind of steering, you know, of services. They're even
also a heavy labor intensive. This is where knowing what your community needs and what are the resources there to service them. Because again, DC has interesting pockets of large populations, but not a lot of facilities. Support. So again, they don't have a lot of hospitals, a lot of urgent care. This is a prime example of, you could call 911 and not get assistance. Indeed. Like literally, the EMTs can't get to you. They physically can't get to you. So this became a vital aspect to treat those individuals specifically when they have power outages or when it becomes really cold and they need to, people call 911, but that's not really what 911 is for. They need an extra resource to say, hey, I'm in danger, or, you know, I'm having some issue. Can you help me? This is becoming the issue where now there is a nurse or a nursing kind of practitioner kind of individual that can now redirect or actually get the resources, other resources. And they've also incorporated Lyft, which I think is a really interesting aspect to it. Again, having a social consciousness to a company. Mm-hmm. This is what they provide as a service to, if you do need to go to the hospital or you do need to go to urgent care, now you don't have to go into the ambulance and have the cost. You can now have someone pick you up and take you to the facility that's closest to you at a minimal cost.
And again, and I would hope too that, you know, when we cover things like this in our blockchain chats, that, you know, our folks out here are really starting to think about, you know, where you are in your particular cities and where you could, you might really know of a need that your city has, and you could be that person to come up with these kind of projects, because that, you know, it seems really, you know, like that's truly meeting a need, as you just mentioned. And what you described is truly a situation that plays out here in Detroit. I know it's the case here too, you know. And then there's, like we talked about earlier, certainly each city has its own particular needs. And we already have a lot of people who are boots on the ground folks, you know, in their neighborhoods and things like this. You know, these kinds of things can now potentially be brought to brought to bear, leveraging technology, and make your area smart.
Dr. Keisha, I want to go back a second to something you just said, because, you know, ultimately innovation starts with just an idea.
Indeed.
Right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times we don't slow down long enough to hear ourselves. Yeah. Right? So we complain all day about things that could be better. In those complaints is a business idea. Absolutely. Right? It's a solution to something, because you've identified the problem. Yep. You know the pain point that's bothering you. You've got the solution more than likely, or at least you're starting the dialogue that that's a problem that needs to be solved, and it needs to be solved now. So that's the kind of issue you bring to, you know, a group of friends or to whatever social community you're involved in, and say, hey, I've got this problem that's just burning me. You know, what do you guys think is a way we can solve this? Do you also experience that? You know, and we have to start trusting ourselves and trusting that the things we think of, there's merit there. But so often we say it and then we just go on with life, right? Exactly. And go to work for somebody else and keep moving the same way we've been moving, instead of stopping long enough to hear the things we're complaining about or critiquing, or, you know, saying, man, I wish this did this. Well, let's make it do this, right? Yeah. You know, when I see
that could be had.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just think of when products come, I see products and it's like, I have said that for years. You know, how many times have we said that? And you're so happy somebody did it. You know, my favorite one this year, in 2019, was Black Girl Sunscreen. Yeah. For years, I've been saying, sunscreen leaves that white film.
Yeah, not right for us.
I'm not going to do it, because I don't want to, you know, you take your picture, you don't want big white film on your face, so just forget the sunscreen. But now there's a company, Black Girl Sunscreen, and it does not leave a film. Yes. I've been saying it for my whole life, right? Even as a little girl, I remember being like, "Why I gotta be white?" You know,
to be protected. Yes, yes.
But we go through life having the plan.
Yeah.
Already, it just takes someone to slow down long enough to say, "Wait a minute, listen to what I just said. That actually makes sense. That could be a business. Let me see how many other of my friends have this same problem."
Yes. You know, it's funny you brought up the sunscreen piece. You know, not to promote, I guess, other stuff, but kind of, too. You know, there are the flesh tone Band-Aid.
Yes.
I totally came with my own, as brown as I am. I
came with a brown Band-Aid.
Band-Aid. And I was like, oh, no, let me use my Band-Aid. And they were like, oh my God, where'd you get that? I was like, oh, I got it at Target. So hopefully,
can you imagine how long, why did it take so long for us to get brown Band-Aids?
Exactly.
I know. So yeah, that was hilarious. Even my doctor was like, oh my goodness, I love it. I was like, oh, got it at Target, you know. And so hopefully they got a boost for me. That was me. You got that big order from Detroit.
Yeah, hopefully the order get some.
I think that's where, again, the small changes, just like
Yeah.
that, introducing somebody to something that they may not know, and that like,
Mhm.
there is a ripple effect in information sharing. Sometimes that's,
Very
again,
true.
just having the conversation. As I always say, it may not even be a complaint, just like, what if this could happen? And that's
Mhm.
where you even got to go to. I think this is where we control some of the dialogue that happens in our own communities, our local government. You go to these meetings, these board meetings, and they say, did they talk about the stuff that has nothing to do with you? You feel like, I live here and you're talking about stuff that has no bearing on me.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
the kind of thing that you could say, hey, I would like to talk to my local mayor, or go there and say, hey, these are the issues that I would like to talk about. Have you thought about this? What are you doing to attack this? Do you have any, tech solutions that may be applicable? Just raising the question. I think sometimes being curious and having a mindset of open-ended dialogue. Like I said, we think sometimes that we just complain to hear ourselves talk. But there is a solution there, or just being mindful that you're saying something with an intent. I'm putting it out here with the hope to find something. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm asking the question to have that spawn, like, hey, do you know where I could go and help this, get brown Band-Aids? Did you know that you could get brown Band-Aids? Like, that's the whole point. And it starts that ripple effect. And I think that's where it is a mindset shift. We're just so used to taking what is, and we really have to not so much question everything, but just say, ponder, if this is possible, like what else could happen? What if this could be possible for me?
And you know what, that brings to mind too, because a lot of times people may say, we say that we have these credits, but where do we take it? This kind of speaks to expanding your network. And, again, I'm going to put a plug in for, our group, being in a group like this and others where there are people across all different types of, industries and things like that. I'd say also join some of those groups that deal with, your local, legislators and stuff like that, so that you can have where you might not be able to physically go to the meeting, but that's what they do. You can bring that information to them and they take it just to where you were saying. So we truly do have a seat at the table and not end up on the menu, kind of thing. Yeah, well, you know what, we've kind of got into a lot of the stuff here. Let's look at some of these low points here they talk about, which we probably essentially cover here. They said here that American cities were confronted with some unintended consequences as a result of one of their data-driven ideas. The plan was to improve public transport in low-income communities, and cities had begun building apartments and they began building apartments near stops to achieve this public transportation support. But instead of expanding the educational and the employment opportunities, which were the real need, these developments encourage gentrification and push the same people away for whom the project was designed. So these new developments, increase the rents in the poor neighborhood and outpace the people for whom the expansion of the transit was intended. So again, one of those kind of things again where, good intention, but, not really getting the heart of the root of the real situation. And let's see what else happened here with San Diego. San Diego Union Tribune studied the developments in 4 cities in California where about 400 multifamily buildings were completed or were under construction within a half-mile of the stop. The neighborhoods where the family earns less than $64,000 a year. The newspaper analysis showed that the monthly rent for a 2-bedroom apartment was more than $3,500. Wow. And in these areas where the average income was less than $30,000, the average rent for a 2-bedroom was still more than $3,300.
Wow.
That sounds like some basic demographic information that could have been figured out before. But
that's what I'm saying. What happens is they now feel like this is where you're leveraging data in the inappropriate aspect. We know that this is, you're forced to live here. You can't go out, you work in the community. Now I'm charging you more. And they're seeing this specifically in California with San Francisco, San Diego. Those are those type of things where the demographic becomes, a target. Instead of trying to help them, now you've targeted them, and now you utilize that and leverage that data against them. And that's a really
And I think you have these shifts also in lifestyle, right? Because now you have a different demographic of people who want to be closer to your metropolitan areas, and they don't mind riding public transportation to make life easier to get to and from. So the target audience is now different, right? So you've got people utilizing public transportation that make a lot of money alongside with people using public transportation that don't. Mm-hmm. And so as the business owner and the owner of the land, right, I get to say which one of those demographics I'm going to target with my fancy apartment building. And it's going to be the ones that make a lot of money and still need the bus stop right there. You know, so it's we have to, the governments that make these decisions, the city governments, they have to think this all the way through, you know, because they have control over who they sell the land to in many situations, at least, you know. And I see it time and time again. I mean, downtown Louisville is being, you know, people are being outpriced. You can't live in the, you know, close to the surrounding downtown area. People just can't do it. And historically, that's where people lived. Yeah. And now they're getting priced out. I mean, all around me, there are luxury apartments with, you know, rents that the price of this article is stating, which is ridiculous for this city, but they exist. And they're very nice, but the people living there are not the people that needed a place to go.
Yeah, I mean, DC has went under a strong gentrification. Like, I mean, neighborhoods that were truly low income and still had access to public transportation, literally changing overnight. Like, there were projects everywhere on U Street, and now U Street looks completely different. I always say, you know, when
Detroit too, let me assure you.
Different is when you have white women jogging. That tells you everything.
That's when you know.
Because I was on U Street, like, I don't understand why this, like, and then you see, like, you know, Whole Foods and Panera, you're like, this is not U Street. This is not where I thought I was supposed to be. So that also comes into, again, you're seeing the change. And again, what they're wanting to do, this is where who gets access to the data as well. Because again, if that was somebody who's saying, okay, we need housing that's affordable, we need better schools, we need that could have been the precedent, and you use that data to bolster that. But if you just hand that over to some commercialization, like, hey, we have all these residents and we need this, and everybody's growing at a 10% increase, then they're just like, throw up some apartments.
Absolutely. And trust they're doing it.
That's where you get this. The data becomes a leveraging tool. You got to put it in the right hands. And also, again, having the constituents say, yeah, we don't want luxury apartments. We want affordable housing.
Right. Very different.
I do want brand new buildings, but I don't need all that extra. And I need it to be reasonably priced. So that's where I think there's that dialogue was missing. It's just data for data's sake. And then who gets it is the top biller. So somebody says, yeah, I'll pay for that. I'll you know, give me that report. I'll take it and do something with it. And then again, it impacts the, you know, community adversely.
Yeah.
And
Jeffrey, I think
I was going to say, because Jeffrey commented that
was a bargain.
3,500 is a bargain where he is in California.
Yeah. I see Laura saying that they got the new Fufu grocery stores in Cleveland too. That trust is just that way in Detroit. And it's gotten to be such an issue in Detroit because we've already had our struggles with our mass transit, which is, you know, even the buses didn't run on time kind of stuff. Now you go down there, you got a little tram thing, you got all kind of stuff. The streets have so many lines on them that you're like, where do I drive? There's the bike thing, there's the walk thing, there's the tram thing, you know, I'm just like, oh my God, you know, but yeah, it's just that way. So, and essentially, I think that's what most of this is talking about here.
Grocery stores, this is becoming a very interesting thing in the aspect of food deserts.
Yes.
You know, utilizing that data very succinctly to show that there aren't available food options for individuals. And that's growing because, again, you have to build a grocery store.
Right.
Who builds those grocery stores is really important, and where and why you build them there is another issue. And we're seeing this moving out. Like I said, not everybody wants to shop at Whole Foods.
Right.
You know, They just want a grocery store that's affordable, and that's becoming this, again, leveraging this data, and this is becoming a more and more significant problem. I think the next paragraph talks about it, the urban data.
Yeah.
I do hate that word. It's irksome, and
I know, right?
it's a PC term that just doesn't really fit. And I'm like, again, but if you're going to say the urban data, this is where who gets access to that information, and again, why is that information being kept? Like, just again, why are you collecting it? That needs to be answered each and every time, because that's this discrepancy kind of playing out over and over again.
Yeah. And I guess they sometimes they mean that urban data is all the traffic and whatnot that happens and whatnot. But anywho, let's see. So what do you guys think we need to keep going on with? I think we've kind of covered some of the stuff here, except we didn't talk about the privacy issues here. They talk about here, one of the biggest challenges facing cities is the privacy issue. And I know, and if you guys are running into the same thing, that what is it, the facial recognition stuff, has really been a big issue here in the Detroit area. Again, partly because of the information is that the urban data, I guess, that they have in terms of folks' faces and what's in the database is not quite representative, or viewed in one way or something like that.
Managed.
I'm just convinced there's no way around giving up the privacy. Unless you're going to buy a cottage in the mountains and be a nomad, I just don't see how you can have tech and privacy in the same life. I just don't.
Yeah. I think this is the redefinition. This is where we have, again, I always say, like, the one part when I read this, the one thing that struck me about that sentence was like, it doesn't matter if you're outside. You have Alexa in your house, you have a brand new TV, and you have a cellular device. All of that is recording you at every given moment.
Yes.
You don't have to go outside to have privacy concerns, because you have privacy concerns in your own
inside
home.
Yes, and so to your point, Tawana, exactly. You can't really have tech and
you can have Alexa. Like I said, that's why the settings are there. Do you turn off those devices? How do you utilize those devices, and when and where do you utilize? Like, there is a level. I don't think it's an all or none now. You do have to give up something. Like I said, if you want to know how to get to a place, you have to turn on your GPS. That means I see you and you see me. That kind of thing happens, but that's for a purpose. And I think at this point, this is where we're going to have to redefine what privacy means.
Yes.
Because again, that privacy meaning, like, I hold all my stuff close and you don't see anything, that doesn't work anymore. That's not a viable definition of privacy.
Right.
Like I said, you have a intent for privacy for your records. Like I said, my health records are mine. No one sees but me. That's the way it was supposed to work. Do I care if you see my Wi-Fi is named, Raina Sunshine? No, I don't care. Like, that doesn't really matter to me. That's not my privacy. And yes, I pay for it, so it is a Raina Sunshine, even though I'm like, why is it that it's her? But, I'm like, I pay this cable bill. Hey, Miss Cherie. But those are things that we have to kind of redefine for ourselves, is what privacy means. And like I said, taking that from not just, like I said, the external practice. We have these things already with us and in our homes. How do we leverage that going forward and moving through, our normal days to just get this, the privacy that we're looking for.
Yeah, but it's not a horrible desire to want to be off the grid, though. So it may just come down to it that we have to just have a bit of a space that's a Faraday cage kind of scenario in your house, which is a thing. Those, I know I've looked into something like, they have those net things that go over your bed. It actually is a Faraday cage, and you can actually put a those sensor things inside the space, and it will register no Wi-Fi, nothing. It's just, you can actually come out of it and in, and it's just, because
does it have to be over the bed, Dr. Keisha?
I'm saying, I'm just throwing that out there of that type, and the reason why I say that is because of the 5G. If you guys know about the issues with 5G, it's been causing some health issues with people and interfering with their sleep and things like that. So that was why it was like over the bed to cover your baby, cover yourself, cover, while you're sleeping, because it was impacting people's sleep patterns and things like that. So that was one of the kind of things that was what I was looking into it for, but it's a thing,
We've got a couple of comments. Gloria said you can use different blockchain dApps where you own the data rather than tech companies owning it. She also said, I think that self-sovereign identity is going to become more important as people become more concerned about privacy and data ownership. Definitely that. And Perez says, it's funny how we lean on technology and we have lost the ability to even read maps. That is so true.
There's so much. How about
there's a population of people who not forgot how to read them or lost the ability. They never knew how to read them, right? You think about the younger generation, they probably don't even know what a real paper map is.
Right. And think about how many phone numbers we used to know. I'm telling you, if you lose your phone now, I think I know just my husband and maybe my mama, just like, yikes.
It's rough. You're right.
It is rough. It's like,
I always say, like Albert Einstein always said, when someone asked him what his phone number was, he would pull out the phone book. And the woman was like, you don't know your number? He said, I don't remember things that I can look up. Like, again, and this is a mind. That's what I'm saying. He was like,
right. And that was pre-internet.
I shouldn't have to commit to memory things that can be viably
easily found,
accessible to you. And I think
that's just it. When you lose your phone, is it found?
Like I said, we do have this readily available. Would I prefer just to say, call somebody rather than having how many trees destroyed just for a phone?
Mm-hmm.
So I said, these are the things that we grapple with. And I said, technology isn't a utopia of any kind of sort. It has its own things that bring about good and bad and some even indifferent things. But when you start to leverage it, it's like you have to find what works for you and works for community at large. So it's not just at all, like I said, some people are never going to like it. They're never going to want to be like, I don't want anybody to know where I am. My mother always says that's why she doesn't like to carry her cell phone. She's like, when I'm out, I'm inaccessible. I'm like, that's not what that's not what that means. You are. I can find you if I really wanted to. But she's like, if I'm not home, that means you can't call me. I'm not sure that's really what that means.
So D'Antonio posted an article. Dr. Keisha, can you click on that article? Looks like it's about privacy, something with the Roomba or the iRobot.
My goodness, the Roomba's listening too? Jeez,
I hope the Roomba's not listening.
Yes, I think it might be listening, you guys. Let's see, it's mapping. Can you see that? Are you all able to see it?
Not yet. The first article is still up.
Okay, I may have to go in and out kind of thing. You know how it does that. There it is.
Again, all of these devices have privacy settings.
Yeah.
Again, people don't want to read anymore. So you have to go into your settings. If you want something to not do something, it's going to be defaulted to do all those things. You have to turn it off. That's with your phone, your TV, your Roomba, your, Alexa, all of them have the same kind of settings, and this is why they have them.
Oh, yeah, I see. It's collecting spatial data of your home, mapping out your home. All right. Well,
What is it looking to determine? If I have room for another couch? I mean, what is it looking for spatial data?
What happens? So the data that's collected by area, it will tell this is what's going on in these areas. So the who bought them, why, the demographic, all that thing is now, kind of collected and aggregated to give me who's buying a Roomba, what is the size of houses. So now then I can the marketers, you know what? If you have a brand new home that's 1,500 square feet, this person needs a Roomba.
Wow.
So I get the
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Wow.
Yeah, so it becomes a very different, again, it's just information, and we have to define who is going to use it and for what purpose. Because it's like now that's just the default setting of a vacuum. No one cares, but they're doing it. They're collecting that, and all smart devices are always collecting information. That's what makes them smart. So your oven, your refrigerator, all of those devices that are smart need that information because they're aggregating data for you.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Oh boy. It says, who else is, somebody's got something about if you use data in apps, the default setting is always to be collecting data, even if you're not using the app. So you have to make sure that you're
Okay.
letting the app turn on. Yeah, turn it on. Yeah, you have, like she was just saying, basically do your settings on it.
But
And
even
that's
if
the
you're
thing.
not using the app, that's interesting.
That's the
an
thing.
interesting
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
Even if you're not using it, it's still collecting the data. That
And
was a
and
very good point, Gloria.
and the thing is you have hundreds of apps. So where you
Right.
may have turned one off, the other one may be using, may still be
That's
on.
why it says, like, it's giving you, are you using it only when the app is in use?
Mhm.
Sometimes it's collecting data when you're just idle. And that's when
Yes.
you have to say, only allow those features when I'm using the app, not
Mm-hmm.
general aspect. And then again, it's going to collect it, but can it send it? No. And those are those kind of things with your TV, your smart TV. It's going to aggregate because that's what it's built to do. It's built into its own operating system. But at the same time, if it says, can I give this information to the developers? You say no, then it literally can't give it to them. Now, I don't know if there's a back door that they get it anyway, but those are why those settings are there, to be able to give you control of, yep, it's going to do this. How would you like it utilized? And you get to say yes or no.
Yeah, well, like they're saying here in this article, the same thing for music, TV, heat, blinds, stove, coffee machine, fans, gaming consoles, smart
the
picture
things.
frames, robot pets. I mean, all kinds of things, you know. So yeah. All right. Well, there
Wow.
you go. Yeah,
This was good. We spent a lot of time on this one. I mean, we spent the entire hour on this one. But this was good.
we went down a rabbit hole a bit there too. Well, let's take it to Africa here. Hold on before we get off. Let's take it to the motherland here, which was a look at, let me see if I can move this up.
Before we go off of that, I think that very last paragraph is very telling. Like, again, we've talked about it over and over, how community involvement, and this is from beginning to end, that you just can't sit idle by. You have to participate in where the conversations are or spawn the conversation. It's not just like the project is there. You have to know what's happening and question and be very much a person who brings, some value add to the conversation, instead of just being railroaded into this thing like, oh, we're doing this and this is just how you'll just have to accept it and go about your business.
Yeah, and then the other piece too, though, is a lot of times we don't know anything about these projects. So those people who are doing these projects need to think in that way and absolutely get the input of the stakeholders who will be serviced by this.
Or like we talked about earlier, become the person doing the projects, right?
Yep. Every last one of those are the options. Absolutely.
Right.
Every last one.
Where you fit in the space. So I think that's what it is. It's not like you got to overhaul, just again, where do you fit? Do some due diligence. And then you have a full, spectrum of things that you can do in order to, help your community, help yourself, and solve the problems that are most prevalent to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jeffrey said the decentralization element of blockchain may lead us to improve privacy.
Yes.
Yes.
The ability to, yes. And again, a new way to define privacy. There's certain things that are going to be public. There's certain things, your private key, but that also brings about, if you lose that private key, now you're responsible. Now you can't get back what you lost. That's where the responsibility, I think people want it all or no way. It's like, yep, okay, if I give you total control of all your data and you misplace or misuse it, you don't have any recourse to go back and say, well, can you help me? No, I can't help you because you didn't want my
there's no safety net. Yeah, the safety net is gone.
Well, and that's the thing. I think that will always open up another possibility for a type of job, because there will be people who will allow custodialship to go to another, So there you go. There's another new type of business that is now created out of a need of this new technology,
I think that'll be a very tiered approach. What type of level? Like, do you get a tier 1 level where it's like, you reset my password for me, or I give you, put it in encryption and you uncrypt it for me, something else, or there's that full disclosure where I see it all, I know what it is, and I just give it to you. There's going to be all those approaches to this, but this is again where we're going to have to think about how we deal with privacy and what that means to us and how we manage it.
All right. Well,
Yep.
I know we're just going an hour, aren't we? So this is 7:30 to 8:30, but I guess we can really summarize this one. This is basically in a minute. Well, I guess we're already past our time. But biggest thing for this article, we had a second article that was just saying about the blockchain jobs in Africa are rising, but the skills are still inadequate. Essentially, they were just talking about how in this article that there's been a rise in the use of crypto in Africa and the different applications for blockchain projects in Africa. But much like here and elsewhere, there is a limit on who's skilled to fill these kind of jobs. They also are looking for folks who, and they said in this article, who are not just where's that part there? Who are not just tech
Right.
folks.
Again, I think that's the biggest takeaway from this article.
Yeah, that was the big
They're not building
takeaway.
blockchains. They're building applications that sit on them
Yeah,
to
here it is.
solve
Yeah.
problems that are relative to the environment. So they're talking a lot about wallet exchanges here because that's pretty much a big issue in Africa.
Currency.
Again, it's not, like I said, rebuilding the wheel. It's building something with the business intent that can just leverage the technology. And we're going to see that over and over again because blockchain is the infrastructure. Once it's built, it's built. It's now like, what do you do with it once it's there? And that's where the business aspect, what can we solve by leveraging it?
Mhm.
Yep. So I think that really was the biggest takeaway there, that they're, looking to they're not just seeking the blockchain developers, but for, folks who basically understand what blockchain is and its use cases, and they'll train them on how, I think it was here. They see the big, they expect to see a big growth in the jobs, but not to code directly onto the blockchain, but rather to create apps. So again, that's that thinking, like you were just talking about earlier, coming up, that person who's able to come up with these ideas, create apps and services that integrate with the largest and most capable blockchain networks. So it's all about those ideas, folks. And I think I'm going to just leave it right there. So anybody have any final words? No, I see we have Cherie there too.
Yeah, we talked about that in a couple of weeks ago when we did the LinkedIn is supposed to blockchain. But again, I think that's ubiquitous of saying just blockchain skills. It's like, what does that mean? What does that mean? And not a lot of it has to do with development. I think this is where specifically our group is kind of innovative in that aspect. We're not just talking about coding, because again, once it's coded, it's done. Once those, we're leveraging other blockchains, we're not building our own, but at the same time, those services and applications are vital, because again, that's where you're going to see the most adoption, and the true business need being served is by creating something that is viable and just simply leveraging that infrastructure on that back end.
Yeah, nothing's changing in this space with regard to business. Just like every business should be solving some type of problem. But what's nice about it is it could be something very small, like apps. They take care of a one task kind of thing. And that way we can work all the kinks out, because it's not trying to be everything to everybody. It's just
one thing and do it well.
One thing and do it well. So with that, we just want to invite anybody who is not a part of Black Blockchain Consultants to consider us. This is the kind of things we talk about. These are the kind of ideas we push around, and we have the resources and the connections and the network to make your ideas come to light in this space. So it's a good time to be alive. Welcome to the second decade of the 21st century. We're here for you to make a real impact in your neighborhood. All right, so good night, everybody. Thanks for your time.
Everyone.
Bye-bye now.